there's something after work, right? Whether that's your family, your friends, something else, but your work can't be the end all and be all. If that happens,
And why
then
is that?
you're
Why-
going to be a slave, right, for life.
Alright, so welcome to a revival episode of YoungCTO. Today, I have a very special guest, Sir Joque.
Joque, yeah, okay.
Sir, can you just give an introduction of your current position?
Okay, so my name is Jonathan Kia. Rafi calls me Joque because that's what usually people in the industry call me. Most of them can't actually pronounce my name properly, so they call me JQ instead of Joque, right? So currently, I'm the regional director for eCloudvalley in the Philippines, but I'm managing Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines. So those are called the established countries in ECB.
Right. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So, sir, is it okay if I call you sir?
No, just call me JQ.
How you started in the IT field? Was this always your dream, or was this more like during the time it was popular? How did it happen?
Yeah, I always try to answer that with experience-wise. It's always about timing and luck.
Timing and luck.
More than anything, right? Of course, the hard work is part of it, but you always need timing and luck in everything, right? How do I mean? When I graduated at Ateneo, MIS, back in 2000, I immediately worked right after graduation. I worked for a company called myphilippines.com. Probably never heard of that company.
No, I had that.
So it's an Ayala company. It's an IT company called iAyala at that time. My Philippines was supposed to be the next Yahoo. So at that time, it was the dot-com boom or bust, right? So everyone was trying to be the next Yahoo out there.
Correct.
And My Philippines tried to be that. There's no Google yet at that time. So I started off there as a web designer and web developer coming from MIS.
Yes.
So when I did the job, I thought that's what I wanted to do.
Oh, really? Okay.
And after 6 to 8 months, I said, this really isn't something that I want to do for the next 10 years of my life. Right. So I tried to pivot. I worked for an auditing company right after that, Ernst & Young.
Okay.
Right. So
what was finances? Is that?
No, I was the database administrator for Lotus Notes. If you're familiar.
Yes, the email software group.
Yeah. So I was doing Lotus Notes, database administrator work, and IT specialist role, helping the audit the auditors.
Right.
That was my job for the first 2 to 3 years.
Did they also ask you to help for physical computers? Like
I was
printers?
even crimping wires at the time. So that's how I started. So really support more than anything. So after that, I guess my break came when I joined a badminton tournament.
Badminton tournament. Okay.
My kabarkada worked in IBM at that time. So he invited me there. We've been playing since we were 10. Right. So he invited me. I played there. Long story short, the managers, I guess, took a liking to me and said to my barkada, why don't we hire this guy into IBM? Not for anything but badminton, right?
Right, exactly.
So this is where I'm saying the timing and luck, I guess, right? The opportunities.
The network, you never know where it comes from.
Exactly, right? So I've never been the type, I guess I'm an exception. I'm not the type to ask all my friends what are their businesses, how can I leverage on that. I've never been like that. So the IBM experience was more on, I was given a chance in IBM. I started off as pre-sales, and I have a sort of technical background. I like tinkering with stuff, but not to the point where I'm doing really in-depth technical work. Right. And again, I tried it. I went through the process and I passed. First year I was doing it, I hated it.
Really?
I really hated it.
Yeah, because that's a more technical role, and pre-sales, it's a little bit different in skill set, I would say. Sometimes.
But I thought I'd like it, right? I said, oh wow, it's a technical role. It's for a big company, IBM. Yeah. Wow, that's great, right? So I tried it out. First year, I did okay, but I didn't like it. And then my manager suggested, hey, Joque, why don't you try your hand in sales?
In sales, okay.
So that's where I said, in sales, wow. Because my temperament at that time was I'm very impatient.
Right.
So I said, I don't think that's the right quality for a salesperson, right? And again, cutting a long story short, when I started sales, since then, I've been doing sales for the next 20 years. And apparently, was my passion.
Wow. Can you perhaps maybe define what pre-sales is compared to sales on a technical for a technical role, right?
That's a good question, right? So pre-sales, you're basically supporting sales in terms of if a customer asks more in depth,
Right.
how do you do certain things on the technical skill? How do you set up a server? How do you configure storage, etc. So the pre-sales person does that for the sales.
Right.
But me, since I'm a bit technical, I can technically do both.
Yes.
So it was a very distinct advantage. And honestly, when I interview people now, any candidates, it's always an advantage when that person has technical aptitude.
Right.
What I mean by that is that, as an example, in AWS, right? If you're familiar with the lingo, EC2, S3,
Yes.
those are the basics, right?
Yes.
That's a server and storage.
Of
It
course.
means nothing but that. When you say that to a candidate and they're suddenly, oh, that's too technical for me, I already know in the first 5-10 minutes that this person, attitude and aptitude wise, may not be a good fit, right? Because they don't even know what that is yet.
Right. Right.
But if you hear that and you're excited to learn about it, then I think that's a difference in terms of what that candidate potentially can be, right? It's
Yes.
not a pushback immediately. So
I remember you actually interviewed
Yes.
me for a pre-sales role before.
Yes.
I didn't even know it was a pre-sales. It was a solutions architect.
Yes.
And in my mind at the time, it was more of a TAM role, which is you go in
an account.
handhold them, correct their infrastructure until the project ends. Because that was my background. I build and then hand over at the end.
Yep.
So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that you really never. Number one is you have to understand the role, what the prerequisites is. Try it out. In your case, you tried it out,
Yep.
and then see if it fits you, and then find which area over time. And
Yep.
you don't find it immediately. Sometimes it's just like you said, luck and timing and grit.
Yeah.
I would say.
And if ever it's advice to younger guys who are graduating, right? My advice is really, sometimes you're so bent on thinking that you've done this for so long,
Yes.
and this is your passion. But when you actually do it and you're in the workspace and it's not, I think you should be daring enough to tell yourself that for the past 10 years I've been doing this, but I need to reset. And it's okay to reset. The problem is a lot of people don't want to reset. Comfort zone, and then they spend the rest of their careers doing 8 to 5 jobs, waiting for lunchtime, waiting for 5 p.m. to go home.
Right.
I mean, that isn't the goal, right? The goal is to do something you're passionate about, ideally.
Yeah.
Find that, and then that's, for me, the recipe for success. I don't think you can ever be successful if you're not passionate about what you're doing.
True.
So
Yeah, I mean, a hard reset even for myself is really difficult now in that sense, because that comfort zone over time, you get there.
Yes.
And sometimes you wonder also, like, why look for more sometimes. But at the same time, you know that if you don't improve yourself, you become stagnant and become less relevant.
yeah, and end of the day, you have to have a goal.
Yes.
I mean, my goal when I started my career wasn't, oh, I want to be a CIO. I wasn't even thinking that far,
Right.
right? I mean, again, for graduates, I was supposed to do a keynote for Vanessa for iAcademy, but schedule didn't permit. But one of the things that I wanted to tell the fresh graduates
Right.
there was that you really don't know what you want to do for the first 5 years of your career. Very few people do. And even those people who think they do, when they start working, they'll realize that, this isn't my cup of tea, right? And the first 5 years, at that time, the biggest companies were McKinsey, P&G, Accenture. Now, if you go to job fairs, it's a much broader
Yes.
and diverse set of names,
Correct.
right? Sometimes it's even a startup.
Yes, definitely.
So why is that important? Because if you've just graduated and you're looking for the next highest paying job, let's say we're classmates. Rafi, where did you end up with? Oh, I'm in P&G. I'm getting 50K a month. And then I'm in a call center. I'm doing 30 lang. Parang I feel bad. Maybe I should look for something else. But it's not about that now. Right now, it's about where can I get the best training for me to realize
Correct.
that this is what I want to do.
Your early years are very formative, right? And
Yep.
so I also mentioned it to our viewers that your first coach or mentor comes from typically your first job. And perhaps school just helps you get to your first job. But afterwards, your first job is really the more formative, where everything majority comes from. A lot of our viewers are quite hungry for what they call coach, mentorships, or sponsors. Did you ever experience that yourself?
So I was telling you earlier, my career is probably an exception, right? I've never had a coach. I've never had a mentor, whether it's family or at work. I've never had that.
Right.
My question to myself was that if I did have a coach and mentor early on, how much faster would it have accelerated my career, right? Because in ECV, the biggest change for me was when I got into this management role. It pivoted me from being an individual contributor to teaching. And I never thought that I would like teaching, right? And my fulfillment now doesn't come from the numbers or the revenue from ECV. Of course, that helps. But the fulfillment comes from seeing someone I coached and mentored a year ago,
Right.
and seeing them now. And seeing how good they are now. As an example, one of our CEs here, it's always a story I tell.
Yeah.
One of the CEs we've started with, one of the earliest in ECV, maybe employee number 4, could never even present to me. They would stop in the presentation because people say that I'm intimidating, right? I don't know if
I don't know.
not.
Maybe.
I hope not.
You're,
right?
you're quite tall.
I hope not. Yeah.
Maybe it's the height.
So yeah, when he was presenting to me and I'd ask questions in the middle, he'd stop and he couldn't continue.
Right.
And I said, hey, what's wrong? Is there any pressure? He just couldn't, right? And so after that, I coached him a bit. I mentored him. And right now, whenever he writes me something every end of the year, he always remembers that time. Because now he speaks publicly today.
Oh.
So when you see that transition from before and after, and you see this guy now presenting, very confident, dresses up, you at least had a hand in that, right? So I guess that's the difference. If I had that mentor before, maybe it would have been faster for me to get to where I am, right? But yeah.
Right. You mentioned a little bit about an individual contributor to a manager.
Yes.
Some of the questions I also get from more middle to senior people is that, is it really necessary to move from an individual contributor, like say they're a specialized programmer, or like you said, maybe sales or tech sales, that they have to become a team lead, that they have to become a people manager? Is that like necessary, or how can you? Are there people that you would recommend just stay in your lane in that sense?
That's a good question. So I guess this is my perspective again from 24 years, right? My perspective is not everyone can be a manager.
Right.
Not everyone likes managing people.
Maybe what are the key skills that you can, like identify, especially before you promote somebody into a managerial?
I think more than key skills is, again, from a coaching mentorship perspective.
Right.
When you really talk to your people, you have a pretty good idea what their temperament and how they are. And some people really don't want to be managers. Even Malaysia, even in other countries, it's the same thing. It's more about the coach being able to give the perspective on what does it mean to be a manager.
Because, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a manager?
Because to be a manager, like me, when I was IC for a very long time.
Yes.
I was doing sales in IBM, HP, Dimension Data, VMware, AWS. That's a span of 16 years.
Right.
And all that time I was an IC. And it's very different when you're an IC. You have your own number, you're trying to take care of yourself.
Correct.
There's no one else but you.
Yes.
The only thing you take care of is how do I collaborate with other parts of the org so that they help me get to my number.
Correct.
So that's an IC. But when you become a manager, even my attitude and temperament totally changed. We were just having lunch earlier. My colleagues were saying how different I am when I was in AWS versus now. Because you need to, mature is not the right word. You need to elevate yourself. When people look at you as a manager, they will usually follow your lead.
Yes, exactly.
That's always my view.
That's true.
And if my temperament is that every time there's a crisis, I'm going crazy, then their temperament is always, oh no, if there's an issue, this is the right way to do it.
Right. And they'll be afraid to ask for help, or
more than
maybe
afraid,
report.
More than afraid to ask for help. I think it's more on their perspective is that it's okay to go crazy when a crisis happens. Versus, let's calm down, understand the situation first, because my manager sits us down all the time.
Right.
So I think that's important. Yeah.
Cool. Let's have some more couple of questions. You are a international manager in that sense.
Yes.
You cover ASEAN.
Yep.
What can you also mention about the we also have audiences that migrate.
Yeah.
Or some people prefer to stay here or even stay in the provinces. They don't even want to go to Metro Manila, right? What's your perspective, overall perspective? Maybe you can just give an idea of what's happening out there in a provincial setting, because I know ECV also employs
Yes.
remote work, right?
We do.
But you also have an office, and now you also have the perspective among ASEAN as well.
Yeah. So we do a lot of partner to partner. And one of the reasons for that, obviously, is more diversity. But to answer the question, if I was in a province, my world is just that place. And if that place is a small place, as an example, nothing against wherever it is, diba? I mean, your perspective is very narrow compared to if you go to Manila, it gets bigger.
Correct.
When you go international, it gets even bigger.
Right.
So the broader your perspective, the more options you have, right? Because again, if you're in this space, your mindset maybe I can only grow here,
Right.
and this is the top of what I can be. But when it's this big, there's just so many avenues.
Would you say there's a cap in that sense, or not really? Not a cap, but more like you said, the opportunity size.
I think it's a mindset on the limit, right? That I don't know, if I'm in a room that's this tall only, I know that I can only get here. But when there's no ceiling, then it means there are endless possibilities that I can go to.
Right.
Right? I can pivot work from like my perspective, right? I came from technical. I always thought I'd be technical, but apparently I didn't like it. So I went to a role where I never thought I would. I tried it and I loved it, and I've never looked back ever since.
Right.
So what if you're in that box where you're just technical and your whole perspective and your coaching is always technical? You've never seen the sales side of it. You've never seen the marketing side of it, which might be your calling, right? So
that's interesting. No? We also have a lot of questions in terms of how competitive we are now in the Philippines compared to other countries, especially perhaps Vietnam. I don't know if that's covered. How are we compared to other
how
countries?
is Philippines?
How is Philippines? And if this is not something comfortable, I can just cut it out.
No, I mean, again, we are in 7 countries today, right? Australia being outside of ASEAN, right? I mean, I think they're on very different stages. I mean, that's why we've separated the Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore. Those are the established countries,
Right?
Meaning the first countries we did. So the more tenured and longer the country is, the more advanced and more mature the market is. Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand would be the emerging markets, which is where we were at probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So all the things that we've learned and established, we can practice back down and cascade it to the emerging. So they don't make the same mistakes. At least we try to, right? Because we've seen the trajectory.
I'm so happy you mentioned that we are considered one of the advanced, like with Singapore, Philippines, and Malaysia, because I also teach AWS, and what I've noticed is that sometimes we, especially Filipinos, we feel like Singaporeans are very advanced compared to us. But when I teach them, sometimes I notice that we actually have very excellent skill set here in the Philippines. Sometimes even better starting point than Singapore.
I mean, to give you an idea, we have a subcontracting model for ECB where even Singapore subcontracts resources from the Philippines, and that's on the technical scale also. SAs, PMs, even project managers, even CEs, cloud engineers. So I wouldn't say that any country has a skill set superiority over the other. I think, especially on established, the resources are there. You just need to find it.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. So we're happy to be competitive.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
We're getting a lot of jobs, no?
For sure.
So maybe some last few takeaways here, no? So first is, let's see. You mentioned to me personally that passion is very important in this field of IT. Were there times where, as you mentioned, you had low points in that sense, like you didn't like it? How did you recover from it, or did you just move on from it? I mean,
Yeah. For me, at least, again, my view of the world has always been, if I like what I'm doing, I'll stay.
Yes.
If it starts stagnating and it doesn't get better, I need to find the reason why. And if I know the reason why and it still remains the same, I need to move. In my career, my max is 5 years.
Yeah.
Before 5 years or on the 5th year, I move. This is the only company I've been in that I've been in more than 5 years.
Wow.
And it's an SI, which begs the question. Everyone sometimes asks me, 90% of the people I interview ask me, you were in AWS already. Why did you move to...
Yes.
Because ECV, when I joined in 2018, no one knew who we were.
Yeah, you were employee number 2, right?
I was employee number 1 in AWS.
I see.
Right? So open the offices here, there for
Yes.
5 years, super successful. I mean, there's no reason technically for me to leave.
Yeah.
But the opportunity came along, and I said, if I wanted the next step in my career, then, it's a managerial role and managing everything.
Yes.
Basically, what I've learned for the past 20 years, I could put into practice. You sometimes can't do that on an MNC. Even if you wanted to, there
already structure,
there's
structure.
A push-down cascade already
Yes.
from US or the region that you need to follow this.
Right.
No matter how good your idea is, you're not going to get it done.
Right.
So that's the difference for me, right? The freedom to be able to do something. The downside is less structure, less processes, more headache in a sense, versus you're in a really good company, you have all the benefits, but you're limited in a sense.
That takes courage in that sense. Look, I noticed you in AWS, you're also an early adopter, and then here again, an early adopter, right?
Yeah, I mean, that story is actually very interesting. I was in VMware. We were doing 300% quota every year. It was the heyday of VMware at that time. And out of nowhere, I got an email from Amazon Web Services.
Yes.
Rick Harshman came to town and said that, hey, we got your resume and you seem like a really good fit. Can you meet me when I'm there?
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about AWS at the time. I knew about them name-wise. When we were doing VMware, we were saying, what the heck is this AWS? This is never going to fly. Right? No, seriously.
Right.
We're saying, how many customers does AWS even have in the Philippines? Yeah. So before the interview, I did my homework because obviously I need to at least know what I'm talking about.
Of course, that's important.
And when I ran through it, I said to myself, I can't believe that this is the first time I'm reading this, because if I knew about this, it seems like I wasted so many years selling on-premise and virtualized environments when this is what it should be.
Moving forward, yes.
No, even
Before back then.
You're talking about early adopter, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's always been a buzzword. Cloud was a buzzword in 2014, 2013.
It's now 16 years, I believe. AWS is now 16, 17 years. Yes.
How many years has AI and data been a buzzword? IoT been a buzzword, right? But which is mainstream, which is not. So imagine at that time, when it was just a buzzword, if I didn't really read up on it, I wouldn't have that light bulb moment, right? Like, wow, this is actually something that can disrupt everything in IT.
Right.
And it has.
It has. Actually, it has, definitely.
Yeah, and because I'm one of the first, I guess, pioneers knowing this, I guess obviously your name transcends also that span of time, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm happy to be one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And, as a closing, perhaps 2 questions is, are there other passions that are non-IT for you? And is it important to have non-IT passions as well?
Yeah, definitely. So again, I was telling you earlier, my passion has always been to open a restaurant because I love food.
Right.
Right. And we just soft opened 2 days ago in BGC. Right. So I think always have that passion in terms of what you're doing in your job. But outside of job, there is life after or outside the job.
So you have to have that work-life integration.
You need to. I don't like using the word work-life balance. It's so overused, right? It's more on there is something more than work. There's something after work, right? Whether that's your family, your friends, something else. But your work can't be the end-all and be-all. If that happens,
and why is that?
You're going to be a slave, right, for life. So that's my suggestion or my recommendation for, the people listening. If they're looking for direction, there's no one formula, but that's the formula that worked for me, right? So
great. Any last advices for our audience?
Last advices. Again, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Never be afraid to start over, right? If you feel that it's not your passion, even if you're 28, 30 years old already, restart. Because if you don't restart and you continue doing what you're doing and you're not passionate about it, oh wow, that's going to be a really dreary and painful work life that you're going to have. And that's going to affect everything after, right? So balance it out. It's okay not to know what you're doing even when you're 28, 30 years old, right?
Just 40s? Just 50s?
40s a bit late, yeah. but within that span, 21 years old.
Experiment a lot.
Yeah, first 5 years especially, experiment. The best advice I got from a country manager in ECV is that when I was deliberating whether to move out of AWS or not. He says, JQ, why does it matter if you move out of AWS and you're hired by abc.com company? If you get the package that you like and you're happy with what kind of work it's giving you and you're helping others, then why does it matter if it's an AWS or abc.com?
Wow.
Right? I was like, yeah, that makes sense, right? So yeah, again, it's a change of perspective.
Right.
And if you don't have people you're talking to that way,
Yes.
then you're not going to be enlightened. It's back to that box thing that I'm
Right.
talking about, right? And maybe second, I always like telling the story too, right? My fulfillment in this job, being manager, regional head, is that I'm able to see potential in candidates. So the perfect example I have is the EA that we have in ECV previously, right? Zero IT background, none. Coming from hospitality industry. We hired her as EA, but the role wasn't just an EA. It was to get her to become either sales ops or sales or something that is outside of the hospitality industry.
Right.
Within 5 months, she was able to certify as a cloud practitioner with zero IT knowledge. When some salespeople can't even get certified.
That's true.
So when our EA got certified, I was probably the proudest, right? Because I was the one coaching and mentoring her along with our CTO.
Right.
And I mean, that says a lot, right?
And perhaps also shows that there is a capability to learn, right? As you mentioned, not everyone can get it. And so by trying to get it shows that aptitude.
Exactly. Aptitude and attitude and openness to learn. That's whenever I interview, that's always what I look for. I always tell the guys, in 10 minutes, I know if the candidate's a good one or not. Just the soft skills, being able to talk to you, how they speak about themselves or anything else, you already know.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those are I think the things that I want to share. That's important for, I guess, the audience to know, right? Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much.
Sure.
And to everyone, I hope you liked the episode and you can follow for more future episodes as well. Thank you.
All right.